Heavenly Father, today we put on the full armor to protect us against attack. We put on the belt of truth to protect against lies and deception. We put on the breastplate of righteousness to protect our hearts from the temptations. We put the gospel of peace on our feet to walk in your light, peace, and freedom with the Holy Spirit. We rebuke anxious thoughts. We take up your shield of faith for protection to block and destroy all the darts and threats thrown at us by the enemy. We put on the helmet of salvation to cover our minds and thoughts, reminding us that we are children of a mighty King. We are forgiven, set free, saved by the blood of Jesus. We take up the sword of the Spirit, your living word, that has the power to demolish strongholds and is sharper than any double-edged sword. We come to you, Lord, in prayer daily. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen. What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today I am honored to introduce you all to Monarch, MK Ultra, child sex trafficking, and SRA survivor, world-renowned spiritual healer, psychic medium, twin flame coach, ascension guide, public speaker, lecturer and writer, certified mediator, podcast host of her own channel on YouTube, and a bright light in the darkness, Ellen Red. Ellen was born in Utah into a multi-generational Freemasonic Mormon family and was the daughter of a mentally ill mother who left the family and a dissociated father who would continually neglect her, putting her in harm's way over and over and over. In fact, Ellen's first memories of abuse started around age 4, where she was molested on a schoolyard property while in her parents' care and while they weren't paying attention to her per usual. After that, Ellen was put in the hands of danger through her continued neglect by an intelligent network operating in the everyday world around her and unbeknownst to her. Her life was infested with abuse and abusers, including at school, at home with a man who was brought into her family who would groom her to be trafficked, at the Mormon church she grew up in, which she calls a huge demonic den, and even professionally during her time as a swimsuit model by her own sister. Ellen's abuse was proliferated all around her, even reaching the ranks of Hollywood and the elite. When I first met Ellen and watched her share her testimony on her YouTube channel, I was stunned and awe-inspired by her strength and kindness. One would never know in meeting her today that she had suffered through such a tortured and troubled past. For example, when you read her professional resume, it's incredible what this warrior of a woman has created out of her pain. Ellen has a bachelor's degree from the University of Utah in communications, broadcast journalism, and public relations, and an associate's degree in business, as well as being a certified mediator. She has been featured on multiple radio shows, podcasts, and spiritual forums globally, and runs several successful and thriving large groups and international sites, assisting the global collective in accessing higher consciousness, quantum healing, and shadow healing. She has worked with thousands of people around the world. Ellen has had multiple near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences and has been working with the non-physical collective consciousness for decades. On top of that, she also works in private one-on-one sessions, reading Akashic records, twin flame coaching, starseed readings, quantum healing, light code activations, light language transmissions, and shadow healing through shamanic practices. She can also be hired for group readings, public speaking, and lectures, and she has been featured on many television and radio shows internationally and is currently working on publishing several books on these subjects. Ellen now spends her time helping others and being the leader she needed and didn't have as a child. She inspires and uplifts her community and spends her time making the world better than she found it. I'm personally grateful to have met Ellen and know that you are all going to be just as inspired as I am by the darkness she has overcome to become the bright, beaming light that she is today. Ellen's abusers did everything they could to break her spirit and strength of heart, but what they didn't expect was that the only thing that would break in little Ellen would be the cycle of generational trauma. I ask you all to put away whatever you're doing and give this amazing overcomer and warrior your full attention as we hear her share her incredible testimony of overcoming the impossible. Before I finish introducing today's guest, I wanted to give just a couple quick reminders and updates. If you'd like to be on the podcast as a guest or share any information privately with me, you can email me at imagineabetterworld2020@gmail.com. I'm also proud to announce my new partnership with one of my favorite brands, Rife Technologies, which is a new and innovative company dedicated to revolutionizing the health tech industry. The Real Rife machine is an electromagnetic radio frequency device engineered by scientist Dr. Royal Raymond Rife in the 1920s, used to address various health concerns. These technologies have been used and referenced by many of my guests on this podcast, and I'm excited to announce that you can all now gift yourself with 15% off your Rife Technologies order with the discount link and code I have posted in the show notes. All the rest of my links are in the show notes as well, and I'd love your support across all platforms. Thank you all for caring so deeply about survivors and whistleblowers, and for helping to make the imagination the safest place on the internet for survivor and whistleblower disclosures. So you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming today's guest of honor, voice for the voiceless, spiritual warrior and healer, survivor, overcomer, survivor advocate, walking miracle, content creator, international world changer, and someone I'm honored to call my new friend, the one, the only, Ellen Red. Ellen, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much. You brought me into tears. I promised I wasn't gonna do that.
You deserve every word. It's amazing. You know, it's people, like I said, probably walk by you every day. There's probably clients that you've had and people that you've served that, you know, you served them and they would have never guessed that on the other side of this bright light that they're working with and are inspired by, that there's so much darkness in your life. You know, you've become such a warrior, and I love that you've helped so many take that power back, you know, from their own victimhood and say, wait a minute, let's place this shame back where it belongs, and it's not on me, you know. So I'm really
Yes.
excited to dive into your story because, like I said, you know, you've really overcome so much, you know, and helping us to understand how this world works is really complicated. But I feel like one testimony at a time, we're doing that. And I'm really grateful that we get to add your puzzle piece to the puzzle today. So
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for everything you're doing too, because it's amazing what you're doing, and I would love to hear everybody else's story too on your channel. And I've watched a few of the videos, and they are all touching too. So thank you.
thank you. I know this stuff's hard to talk about too, you know, and I've never met a survivor that wanted to do it. Always, it's because it might save a child's life. It might help another survivor. It might educate somebody like me who didn't
Yeah.
grow up this way, you know? So the selflessness of a person to willingly divulge the hardest parts of their life to complete strangers is just, it's beyond any courage that I
Yeah.
can even comprehend, you know?
Yeah.
So I know everybody's gonna love and be so inspired by you the same way that I am. So I thought we'd start. Let's go back into your childhood. So I thought we would go back. I know that you have your own audience. You've shared your testimony. But for people on my channel who are new, I wanted to give people the opportunity, and even people who have listened to you, to get to know you better. So let's go back in time and lay the foundations of before you were born, and maybe how far back this abuse started, what your parents did or grandparents, sort of an outline of any family history events that are important to your story and what you went through.
Well, I would say that we do have a generation of LDS family members. That's the, maybe the last 200 years. There's a lot of Mormon family members. My whole lineage traveled with Joseph Smith and Brigham Young to Utah. In fact, my great-great-grandfather's on both sides. One was named James Brown, Captain James Brown. So that's now Bountiful, but it was originally named Jamestown after him. So he led the pioneers in with Brigham Young. And the other great-great-great-grandfather led the Hole in the Rock in Utah. Jens Nelson was his name. And so we have deep roots in that environment. So there is a generational kind of polygamy and that type of MK Ultra program, because that really is an MK Ultra program, although that stems all the way back to Egypt and beyond, Babylon and Babylonian stuff. It's deep roots that I think all of us have some connection to in some way or another. But in my lineage, there was that. And then on my mother's side of the family, my grandmother tried to abort my mom with a hanger, and so that left a lot of, and my mom survived as a little 1-pound baby, and it left extraordinary trauma in my mom. And so that was why my mom wasn't present. She didn't heal. She couldn't heal. She didn't know how to heal. There wasn't any proper, she didn't know where to go for true spiritual healing, which is why I'm here now. But that she didn't have that. And so she dealt with a lot of trauma. And of course, if anybody knows anything about spirituality and the womb and your aura, it's all connected. So when you have that be your reality, it really affected her. So that made it so that she couldn't be the mother, because when it comes to trafficking or child abuse, it's oftentimes the mother then that stands in the way of the man so they can't get to the child, right? And when the mother's also wounded, that really creates a lot of stuff too. So that was there in my lineage. But as far as MK Ultra, it was definitely a long line of Masons there in the Mormon environment, and there was the polygamy that has infected really the lineage, the ancestral healing in my family side, on the father's side.
And then
Even though
what,
my dad wasn't a polygamist, but we had a lot of lineage there that was.
yeah. And what about your parents' upbringing? Was there any abuse in their history? And then what did they end up doing as an adult? Like what were their careers, or was there anything important about who they were or who they were connected to?
Well, my mom, no, she was too unwell, but what was your original question? What did they, oh, abuse. I don't know if she had any sexual abuse. I really don't know because I don't know her. But I only knew her until I was 4. She's passed over now. I really didn't get a lot of connection with her. She lived with me for a short time, years later after she had been gone all my life. So it was very disconnected there. I don't know. But I know with my dad, he was not sexually abused, but he was an orphan in a way, because my grandfather was he was hit by a train and he was drug 16 miles, and they ripped off 3 of his limbs, and then, or I don't know how many miles, it was a long way that he was drugged, and it ripped off 3 of his 4 limbs, and my dad was only about 2 when that happened. So the twin brothers and the aunt, they were just 2 and 3 years old. So we he didn't have his father, and that gave him a stepfather growing up. And then his mother, my grandmother, she developed leukemia, and she was in great suffering, and they were Mormon. So heaven forbid you take a painkiller, because you're going to go to hell if you do that. We're going to let you sit here and scream in pain every day and not take you out of your pain while you're sitting there dying from leukemia. So he had to really grow up listening to her suffering like that. And it really caused a lot of trauma. And she died when he was 12. So then he became orphaned. And so that was, they then got raised from that point on by grandparents that are really old fashioned and Mormon. And so some old school, dogmatic kind of stuff. And of course, pioneers who were kind of, I give a lot of credit to them too, because they are tough people and they know how to survive. I couldn't be the way I am if I didn't have that good part of them too. Okay. So I'm not angry with any of them really, but so he did have that, but no, he wasn't really abused. He was maybe in his own right neglected by accident. And I think that that's what caused him to become so disassociative. Then later he became an English professor. So, I did pick up a lot of his qualities in terms of writing, and also later he got into being a social worker and working with psychiatrists and healing really, traumatic people. And he had no clue what he's doing. So I don't know how this happened. He he doesn't know anything about psychology really, but that's who he is. And he's a good man, don't get me wrong. He's just very disassociated from his own trauma. I don't think that a lot of what he did, what he exposed me to, was necessarily intentional. It was more, and I'm not making an excuse, because I know victims make excuse all the time for their perps, but I think that he was just too broken of a person. He chose not to see it when he should have, and he chose to take a different path than he should have took, because he had a responsibility for me. But he was also disassociative, and also a lot of that is the culture of the Mormons.
Yes. And
The
I
Mormon
appreciate
culture.
you like humanizing that, because I think, for people who weren't born into these families, when we hear of this stuff for the first time, or we're just learning, our first reaction is just this rage and anger and, off with their heads. And we forget that like these were innocent children that were born and were corrupted, we need to not excuse what they do. But when you humanize it, you actually can start to understand how this abuse gets transmuted generationally, where if we
Yeah.
just kill the problem, we're never actually understanding, what's causing it to begin with and like, the root of it.
Yeah.
So it's
I
really
couldn't be a
difficult.
true healed person if I held resentment towards him. I don't hold resentment towards any of them, but I fully understand everything that happened and where they chose not to be conscious of what they were doing, and where they chose to turn a blind eye because it was too difficult for them to face the emotions of what I was going through, that they put me through. So, but I'm aware of the whole story, and I still love all of their souls. I don't forget what they've done. I'll never forget, and I will never justify it. And if I have any opportunity in my own life to do opposite what they did, I will, which is why I'm here right now. But I ascended, and I was able to fully go through Christ conscious enlightenment, and I don't have anger. I just have love for humanity. And I saw the whole thing even from the behind the scenes. So I even see from an astral level what's going on behind the scenes that even causes them to do what they do. It's hard to be an empathic person because you have empathy even for your perpetrators.
Yeah. But again, it doesn't excuse it. You're not saying
No.
it's okay. What we're saying is I understand what happened and like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
understand how to break that from happening again.
Yes.
That
Correct.
and there's
Correct.
a difference, it's not excusing behavior. It's saying I want to understand it so I can stop it, and
Right.
you're such a strong example of that.
Understanding is the bridge to love, isn't it? And so that's the bridge between me and you, is having understanding of one another. So without that, then we're never going to evolve as a species.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And so let's kind of go to, I don't know if you have siblings that are older than you, but let's talk about maybe how did your parents meet and what was their journey into parenthood and your youth like, especially leading up to age 4, because I know that that was a big year for you for many reasons as a child.
Yeah, it was the big year. You do your homework, girl. Thank you. Um, yeah, again, Mormon. My dad was Mormon, and so he waited to get married for a long time. I think he was late in his 30s, which means that he was a virgin for a very long time, because they don't have sex until they're married. And my mother was his first wife, and she was only 18 and he was in his late 30s, so he's a lot older than her. That alone was a problem because she was young, and she was a runaway from Michigan, where she came from. So she escaped Michigan to get away from, I guess she didn't like, I don't know what her story is. I hear some different things from my dad, but he's a little, I don't know that I trust everything the way he says it. But she ran away. She ended up in Utah, and a woman named Mildred Lazenby, who's the sweetest little lady, had a prophetic dream that she would meet my mother on some steps in the temple of the Mormons, because they were all Mormon. But she still had a prophetic dream about it, and she met my mom and knew that she was to adopt my mom. And so she did, and she took her under her wing, and then she introduced, my dad. They got married, and they had 4 children, my mom and dad. I was the last one. And but they were, by the time I came in, my mom was fragmenting. Fragmenting means that a person who goes through so much trauma that doesn't get proper healing for it, they kind of do like Medusa, and they start to fall apart in their mind, and they become very sick, mentally ill, schizophrenic, bipolar, etc., etc. So she began to fragment by the time that I was born, and they were having a lot of problems at that time, and so they were divorced by the time I was about 2. And then at that point, I think my mom tried to see the children for a little bit of time, another year and a half. And then my dad got remarried right away, and they took the children from my mom in court. And I think that that crushed my mom in a lot of ways, because she was just lost. She didn't know what she was doing. She didn't want to have more kids. I read some stuff that she wrote. She was done. I was her last. I broke her. No, I'm just kidding. But she was done. And then I think that her losing, the rights to her children broke her, and she left at that point. And I never saw her again until I was 19. Oh, I saw her once when I was 12 for a short visit. And then I saw her again when I was 19 for about a year, and then that was it. She died. I pulled the plug on her about 5 years ago. We had no choice. So we had to kind of make a decision there. And that was, I dreamt of that before it happened. So I experienced her death with her.
Oh my gosh. It's so sad how this corrupts families, like it's sad enough what happens, but when you see like the long-lasting effects of how it can separate siblings, how it can turn entire families against the person that's coming out and whistleblowing, trying to get
Yeah.
people out, and it's just really sad. I'm sorry that you've had to deal with all of that. And, like I said, it's just amazing to me you didn't have all these strong examples of love and kindness and compassion and or even, just you didn't have any really situations that exemplified anything other than abuse, and here
It
you
was
are.
a very dark childhood. It was very dark. I had one woman when I was about 15 years old that I remember sparked my soul because she was the first person who ever just unconditionally loved me. And she had enough wisdom to see into my situation that she just began to gently give me love. And that it lit, look, I'm going to cry when I think of her because that was the first time I remember specifically sitting there going, nobody's ever treated me so good. Like nobody ever loved me like this. And it changed me. And I made a vow to myself that I always wanted to do that for people.
And look at you. That's exactly what you're doing. What a beautiful sort of prophecy to now be able to take the torch that was given to you and now you get to light everybody else's candle. That's so
That's
beautiful.
the power of love. And it is a real power. And if she didn't come in when she did, I was suicidal and I was literally cutting my wrists and I was literally trying to find ways to end my life by the time I was 14 or 15 because I had seen it all. I saw it all, and I mean it all. The only thing I didn't see was love until she showed up. And that's when I said, maybe I'll wait around for a minute because if there's more of that, I'm going for it. So,
And so it sounds like right from birth, there was dysfunction. It might not have been what happened continually later on in your childhood, but you had a mother that had mental illness by the time that you were here, especially. And then you had a father who was dissociative and neglectful. And obviously just these different dynamics going on in your household. So do you remember any did any other type of abuse begin before age 4, or was that sort of the age when everything really kicked off?
there was a lot of I guess you could say neglect, and I guess you could say that there was also this issue with my older sister who ended up trying to unalive me several times before I was 4. And I remember being 2 years old and literally hearing spirit guides telling me what to do and how to get home. So I was already being both groomed by the spirit world as well as put through a lot of stuff with some of the siblings and the environment that we were in, but there really wasn't any, if I can remember, any type of sexual abuse until I was 4. And then once that happened, it just, that was it. And once it just put me on a spiral elsewhere, and all of a sudden the whole network showed up, and I learned how this world is run.
And so let's talk about that year and leading up to that event, and then let's dive into what happened at age 4.
My dad got remarried that year to the other wife, and they went on a honeymoon, and while they were gone they left us with another family that also had a lot of kids, and I drowned in a swimming pool. I died and I went to heaven, and they resuscitated me, and I had full memory of going to the other side. I saw the tunnel of light and I had angels there. I saw Jesus. I saw all these things. That was my first near death experience at age 4, and that was right before I got molested. So it's almost as if divinely I was first being protected by the spirit world and shown some things so that I could cope with what was going to come. um I had a dream. I remember having a dream when I was about the same age, before the molestation. I believe it was before the molestation, where I remember running around the house going, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, save me," because a bad guy was trying to get me. And the next scene in the dream, I was sitting on my dad's lap at the kitchen table while he was talking to the bad guy about Jesus instead of loving me and protecting me. He was so religiously programmed that he was more focused on the religion itself than the love, the message of love that the religion was trying to teach, you see. And this is why I think a lot of people, even in religious situations, they're distorted. They're not understanding that the essence of love that the Christ energy brings. So I remember being prophetically kind of warned by the spirit world that I was going to be given into the hands of bad guys by my dad. And that's ultimately what ended up happening, although a lot of what happened mostly with him is that he would just turn a blind eye, or he would blame me when it became my sister's husband. He blamed me for it because I was 12, because in the Mormon culture they believe that 12, 13, 14-year-olds can get married.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
that's what they were doing. That's the way that my dad said to me when I was a teenager. Well, in 14-year-olds, Brigham Young, his great prophet, married 14-year-olds. So you're old enough to know, and that was his mentality. But ultimately, there were other events that happened even before then, and so that's kind of the culture that I was in, and the environment that I was exposed to, because my dad is a chauvinist, and that's just it's part of the Mormon culture. It's chauvinism.
During this
Mis-
time, and we'll talk about what happened on the school grounds, what type of religious situation were you in at that time in your life? Were you attending church and already a part of that culture around that age 4 and before, or did that happen after?
Well, yeah, I was born into a Mormon church, and they get you right from the beginning. You go every Sunday, and then on Monday they have a program for you every single day to make sure it gets through your head. So it was very deeply programmed into me, but I had the drowning experience, and when I drowned, I saw that there was no religion there. It's a spiritual thing. It has to do with love. And so I never bought into it even as a 4-year-old, because I saw reincarnation, and they were telling me reincarnation didn't work. And they're telling me that polygamy is okay. And I saw something different. So it's like I was already kind of torn, which, by the way, that creates more fragmentation of the consciousness and the soul, because now you're getting told these two different things. And I was already a psychic kid. So I was really already starting to tear, if you will, at that point, because I was living in two different worlds and they were both opposite. So yes, I was already in a religious culture, and then yeah. But
Wow.
I really never bought into it.
And so let's go to the school grounds. Let's talk about that event because this was a really, really pivotal moment in your life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there were more pivotal ones, but this one set the pace. And it really was. We had this house, and behind us we had this field that we could walk through, and then right behind that was our little schoolyard where our elementary was. And then right across the street was the candy store that we could buy candy at. So if ever we earned any money, we would walk through the field, through the schoolyard, and across the street to get candy. That's what we did. And it was always me and my brother. He's like my little twin brother. He's a year older than me, but so that day we earned no, we earned some money, and we wanted to go to the store to buy some candy. And my older brother, my stepbrother, I had a stepbrother at the time, he let us go to the store because he was babysitting. And so we walked out there, and in the schoolyard was a predator, a stranger, not anybody connected to, because this is why I said with my story, there's so many elements to it, because once you get that was a seemingly random event, but later on a network showed up. And so in this case, we met a man there, and he began to talk to us. And you know how your parents tell you don't talk to strangers. So you're kind of like, you don't want to talk to strangers, but then your parents are also telling you that you have to respect elders. if they tell you something. So now you're getting confused and you're like, do I talk? Do I don't? Do I do? Do I don't? Because you're only 4. I was only 4 and my brother was only 5. And so he said, hey guys, you want to make some money? Well, we come from a Mormon background. We're taught to work hard and earn our money. So we already knew that. And so we're like, ooh, earn money. We can buy more candy. Okay. You know, so we got excited about that. So he basically paid me 45 cents and paid my brother 35 cents to watch. And we had these little round cement things that were in the schoolyard that the kids will play on. So that's where he did that. And then, so that was the first event. And my brother was there to witness. So my brother actually got traumatized from that also. That's a very traumatizing thing, even to be a witness to something like that as a little child.
Oh my God.
And so yeah, and I think that in some ways that can also hurt the male psyche, because their tendency is to want to be a protector, and he was powerless to do that. And so that was a wound that we both got. And then when we got home, we showed our dad our money we earned, and dad got mad and spanked me and sent me in my room, which is like the worst thing you can do to a child that's just been molested, because it taught me that I was bad. And so then I began to feel like, oh, I'm a bad person, I'm a very bad person. So I started to really repress. And then the kids would make fun of me at school and those kinds of things. And so it was very hard to go through that, because there wasn't anybody. I didn't have a mom I could go tell. I had a sister that wanted to unalive me, and I had, boys that didn't understand. And it was just a very unhealthy environment. And so it taught me that when I get harmed like that, I can't tell anybody, because they're just going to hurt me, and they're going to say I'm bad, and I must be bad because they're the grown-ups. And you go through all those thoughts and those pathways. And so by the time I was 7, it happened again. And at that time I never told anybody, because I didn't trust anyone. And then it began to happen, and that's where it kind of started to put me in through all these things. So eventually we got into the whole MK Ultra stuff, because pretty soon these networks showing up. But
And I
yeah.
want to dive into that. I want to ask you a question that sort of combines what we just talked about, or the last two things that we just talked about, which was the church upbringing and then abuse. One of the things that you had mentioned that's not a sort of religious guideline necessarily, but the confusion of respect your elders, but don't talk to strangers. Those
Yeah.
things, when we're told them as a child, they have a profound impact on us if we're told one or both of those things. And
Yeah.
it can sort of dictate like how we interact with people who might be abusive to us. What
Yeah.
else can you speak of in the sort of Mormon text, or some of the rules, guidelines that sort of enable abuse for people who go into the church looking for ways to, let's just say, abuse children, for example?
Well, I mean, it's so difficult, because a lot of their teachings are good, meaning that they like to honor the family unit, and the family unit is sacred to them. And I think that that's a really great, they're very good about that. But at the same time, they almost like to live with blinders on. And I'm speaking generally, so anybody listening, don't get mad. I'm not saying everybody's like that. I'm just saying that in general, it's kind of like that, especially in Utah. Utah is kind of like going to the Stepford wives. Where did they live? Where did the Stepford wives live? It's like this little Mary Poppins land compared to the rest of the world. And so everybody thinks, oh, it's Utah, and so everybody's Mormon here, so we're safe. And so nobody pays attention. It's like they don't want to see that there's bad in the world, because they're all trying to live in the light of God and Christ. And they don't want to see that there's predators that are very dangerous that you should be paying attention to. It's like the blinders, wisdom or gnosis comes when you have the capacity to recognize evil and light at the same time. You've got to know the difference between good and evil. This is the tree, this is the Garden of Eden, this is the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. And if you don't recognize evil when it's there, you're empowering it. And we see this a lot in the spiritual community too, because they don't want to acknowledge that there's anything negative. Oh no, I can't think a negative thought. Law of attraction said, no, 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 you have to see it. That's shadow work. You have to see it. If you don't see it, you can't transmute it. And so that's kind of the culture. It's not so much that it's necessarily, I think, in certain areas that it's necessarily intentional. However, there are very fundamentalist LDS people who believe the way that the original book was written, that they can have multiple wives and they can marry 14-year-olds. And those are the FLDS people that still live and exist in Utah and in other communities. And it's not just Mormons either. It's, you know, fundamentalists or extremists of any type of religion do these things. Muslims, Christians, you name it. It's not just a Mormon thing, but it is this perversion of taking some you know, thought form that is not divine and justifying doing something that you know is wrong. So there's a quote that says that the road to hell is paved by pragmatisms used to justify the doing of what you know to be wrong. And that's what they're doing, is they're carving the path to hell, even for the children that they're exposing to this stuff, because they're trying to justify why it's okay to do this to little children. They'll do anything to justify it than they will to acknowledge that they know damn well that it's wrong. And so they use the religion, some of them use the religion as a justification for that. And so the whole culture itself kind of has this elephant in the room where we know that there's this one group of us, but we're all Mormons, so we don't want to break, you know, like we don't want to say anything bad about the Mormons because, you know, we don't want us to look bad, but we know that our background, our past, our ancestors, everybody was doing this to children and marrying a bunch of people and marrying 14-year-olds, and we're just going to pretend that it's okay. That's
I
the culture.
remember,
That's
yeah,
what's leading behind the scenes of what's happening there. And by the way, Utah's #1 for child molestation 35 years in a row or longer now.
which is horrifying, you know, and I grew up Catholic and I remember being very young and being so confused at their adamance at saying that divorce is a sin. And it's like you said, like some things are initiated, and I think the intention behind it is like how you said, keep the family unit together. Like that's what we want, you know, find the right person, have a healthy family dynamic. The goal is to stay together and to keep that family unit together. But I remember like being around friends that had, you know, abusive parents, and they would say that like, well, my religion, you know, I'm Catholic and it's not part of our religion. Like they say, don't divorce, so we're not going to.
Yeah.
And I remember just being so confused by that because I'm like, but you're not happy. There, it's abusive. Like, why would you want to stay together? Like that shouldn't be a sin, you know? But it's like you said, I think things are intended to have well-meaning, but if there's an abusive person that goes into that environment, they can easily manipulate something good, just like how you know, any Luciferian does and invert it to work to
Mhm.
their advantage to cover up, hide, or excuse or justify abuse behind it, like what you were saying, you
Mhm.
know? And so that's like, I think a big key in when people say, well, how do I know who in my church could be, you know, perpetuating stuff? It's like, well, figure out what in your church could be manipulated. You know, what beliefs are there that could have a double entendre for somebody to really take advantage of, you know, and I think that that's always like a good just way to understand what you're walking into a little bit. And I think the LDS church does have a lot of those little nuances that have the big picture was meant to be, like you said, something like keeping the family together, and like really focusing on putting family first, you know, having a lot of kids, like you said. Like there's nothing wrong with these things. It's just if you're an abusive person, you can take those things and run with it and, you know, use it as an excuse, which is disgusting.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. As you were framing that, I was thinking to myself, yeah, because people are the difference between truly being in the spirit of things versus being up here in the monkey mind of trying to think that you understand God, religion, whatever, up here from the monkey mind, which is Satan's domain. Satan's domain's here. And when you drop it into your heart space, in the essence, in the spirit of things, this is where the spirit lives. And so they're up here trying to understand God this way. Oh, yeah, it's okay because my scripture over here told me this, or brother so and so told me this, or the prophet told me this. That's not, when you get in the spirit of it, you feel whether it's right or not to do this to a 12-year-old or 14-year-old. And if you don't, well, you got spiritual problems. And that's where, as a community, we have a responsibility, as you and I are trying to work with now, is to help humanity see the real truth of how wrong these things are, and the damage that happens to little children when they've been traumatized like that generally lives with them their whole lives, and oftentimes they don't heal through it, and so it traps their spirit, and it can cause lifetimes of karmic cycles.
Absolutely. You're so right about that. And again, these are things that I think people, when they really take these things in and understand them, it can give them a lot of healing for what they went through, whenever they
Mm,
can look at it from a
yeah,
different perspective. So I really
that's
appreciate
right.
you sharing these. It's very healing to hear, things that people are really suffering from, and to hear it from somebody who's healed from it and kind of what they learned. So somebody on the other end is going to have that lesson and it's going to resonate with them.
Yeah.
So let's go back in time and go back to around the age 7. I know that we just said that there was another molestation that occurred. I want to get to age 12 because there's another sort of pivotal moment in your life that happened at that age. But what was your school life like as you're going through all this? Were you a high performer in school? Did this affect you? Um,
I was kind of A's and B's in school. I was also highly psychic, so it was a very big duality experience there of like having this other knowledge and then having this other reality. So it was very confusing to me. But I also had a brother that was pretty abusive to me, and so we had the school counselors called on us quite a few times, and the state would come and do an investigation to see if we were being abused at home, and they would always return us back home because they just thought it was kids beating each other up when dad's at work. So we did have the state come and try to explore a little bit there, but it just didn't pan out for us. And then, like I said, I did okay at school, and I think that for the most part there really wasn't a lot of incidents with more molestation other than those two until I was 12, but it was more that the children were being neglected, all four of us. And the two older ones were being left in charge, and they weren't mature enough to do that. And my sister's very mentally ill. And so they were causing more trauma and more damage and more harm and abusing. And my sister was literally abusing me. They used to nickname me Cinderella because she would treat me like her slave. Yeah. I was basically treated like her slave literally every day. I would have to comb her hair. I would have to make her bed. I would have to cook the food. I would have to clean the house. I would have to do everything. And she got to play Red Queen. And but so it was very abusive and neglectful anyway, even though the molestation kind of was scattered at first until I was 12, and then it was bad.
Talk about age 12.
So that's when my sister brought home this man that she married that was an absolute sexual predator. And he saw the dynamics. He saw that nobody gave a shit about me. And so he just took full advantage of it. But he was also a predator for everyone else. I would witness him. He followed me to my school and he would hit on other girls there and have, you know what, with them too. And then he would follow me to my job because I had a job when I was a teenager, and he would hit on the girls there, and then I would catch him and I would tell my sister because I was trying to tell her what he was doing to me, but I didn't want to directly tell her because she hated me and I knew that she was going to be mean to me. And so I was trying to get the words out. And by the way, if you understand the spiritual body itself, the chakra system, when you've been silenced like I was at age 4, you lose your voice. you don't know how to speak up for yourself. And I was a little child anyway that was put through so much that, I didn't know how to speak up for myself and to say, hey, this is what happened. You wouldn't believe that looking at me now because I don't know how to be quiet. But back then, I didn't know how to speak up for myself. So I would try to tell her what he was doing and to other people so that she would divorce him, because I was hoping she would just get rid of him because he was a predator. But he also then put me through a gang trafficking ring, essentially. And he trafficked me. He got me pregnant, and he got me to not keep the baby, and he trafficked me out of state, and he put me in basically a gang ring. So this is where, when you start to get into MK Ultra stuff, you start to realize, holy crap, you think it's bad that just one's a molester, but these people have like an energy that they're working for. It's almost like a bad spirit that they all take orders from, right? And they're also, they, as you know, because you do enough of these videos, you know that some of them can be very advanced and really working with each other in this stuff too. So he ended up trafficking me to a lot of people. And then because we were still neglected and there was still a lot of other stuff going on, I ended up getting trafficked not just to his little ring of people, but to several others, some that my sister brought into the picture as well. So it became really messy. And of course my dad, he didn't seem to notice anything, you know. So, and I don't want to go into too many of those details, but I will just say that it was very messy for about 2 or 3 years there, where I don't like to even say the number, but I will just say it was a large number that I was trafficked to. And by the time I was about 15, almost 16, I started to find my power, and I told my sister's husband to get, if he ever laid a hand on me again, I would call the police and tell them what he did. And he called his sister in Colorado, and she called me up and threatened me. She had been in prison for unaliving somebody, and she called me up and threatened me. And I was a little girl, I was young, so I believed her. And but I still stood my ground with him. And he left me alone after that for the most part. He didn't ever touch me again, but he still put me through other things. And they had a child, my sister and he, that I was raising. I raised that boy almost his whole life because they were too dysfunctional. And he was the thing that kind of gave me strength to get through all of that, because he was born right after I first got molested when I was 12, and he came along shortly after there, and I was taking care of him right out of the womb. So I was given a prophetic vision about that also, that I was intended to be watching out for him. So I knew when he came in that I had a spiritual contract to help him, because he was coming into a really screwy parents. And but at the same time, by being a protector for him, it gave me a lot of strength too. Yeah.
This guy that befriended your family that ended up under the nose of your father and stepmother, what type of gang was he affiliated with?
It was my sister and my dad. But he was a Hispanic guy out of Colorado. I don't know if I could say, I don't know what gang he would associate with, but he was one of those guys that would get all the tattoos, and he branded me with a tattoo, which by the way is an MK Ultra. It's a psychological thing that they do, where when they brand you with it, it's almost like psychologically you know that you're their property now. If you Google it and look into it, this is a very common thing that happened even with Johnny Nosh, if you know who Johnny Nosh is. But this is a very common thing where they brand you with a tattoo, and he did do that to me also. But I don't know what gang he would have called himself, but I know that they were gangbangers, and they came from Colorado, and then my sister brought him out into Utah, and he ended up bringing brothers and all these other. So he'd have all these gang guys over there, and the next thing you know, they were like shooting guns and putting me through what I was getting put through. And then he was also preying on other girls in the neighborhood too. And probably all of them were.
Oh my gosh. How did your sister get wrapped up in all of this? It's amazing how different you both ended up, sort of the routes that you both took and how this affected both of you. How did she end up kind of going the opposite way that you did and turning into a perpetrator?
I really could wish I could answer that question. When I was young, she was very dysfunctional from early on. She's always been like the one in the family that we're all just like, what in the world is going on with her? But she would bring men home and have, have sex with them all the time from junior high. I mean, she was always kind of selling herself for attentions and things. But she got sent into Job Corps, Job Corps. And Job Corps, this is where the MK Ultra kind of starts to get involved there a little bit, because Job Corps is a bit of a program, just like where they send the kids when the kids get taken out of the home, the CPS. They're running stuff in the background, just like in my junior high. They had teachers and stuff in there that were trying to groom us and turn us into co-cores. And you don't think the Job Corps is full of them, So what they do is they take these broken kids and they get them into their system, and they're the most vulnerable because they're already dysfunctional and they're already broken and they don't have good homes that they come from, and they're the easiest prey. If I was a predator, it would be easy. It's not hard to understand when you understand it. But so that's where she met him. And that's where a bunch of their crew came from that they were running around with doing that stuff with. So it came out of Job Corps, actually. And but again, he also, I think, brought in a lot of that from Colorado because they ran gangs out there, and um it was, I think, in certain ways part of his culture too.
Oh my goodness. And your sister ended up really taking advantage of your modeling career. I'd love for you to talk about sort of how that started. How old were you whenever you got into that? And how did your sister end up being sort of your groomer and handler in a lot of ways, putting you through just these horrific things in that agency?
So this really was so hard. So her husband was doing his thing with me without her really knowing. And at the same time that he was doing that, she was grooming me for the other side of it. And so I was getting it from both angles from them, but and I couldn't tell her because I tried to. And when I finally told her about him when I was 15, she beat my head in with a crowbar. So I knew, that's why I knew not to, I didn't feel safe to talk about it to anybody, because that's the reaction I kept getting. But then she was grooming me on the other side, and she was older than me, so she was already in the modeling scene. The modeling scene in our world is a full-on grooming system. It's an absolute grooming operation. It's an absolute prostitution ring, human trafficking, sex slave ring, all through and through. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not some agencies that are good, that can do some good things, but in general, it's a honeypot situation. Um, and so she got involved in that, and she started grooming me really since I was about 12, 13, 14 years old. And then she started taking me to these events and parties with really a lot of elite people. This is when I started getting involved with a lot of the elitists. We're talking like high-end attorneys, high-end church leaders in the LDS church, high-end politicians, high-end uh movie stars, because in Utah there's the film festival, the Sundance Film Festival, and up there all the movie stars have second homes up there. It's the same rings as Hollywood. I know some of the Epstein victims that were running in the same circles up there with us in Park City. So they kind of, what they do is they have like a network throughout the world where they have these little honey pots to catch all the hot girls, right? Hot girls, or the young girls, or whoever they want to put in their rings. All throughout the world, this happens. And they know, so they put these little swimsuit modeling agencies together, and they pull all the girls out of every city, and then they start taking them and they start sending them to the Prince of Saudi or the Prince of Egypt, or to politicians, or to wherever else. They're just pulling them and extracting them out of every city. These are the broken girls who are pretty that we want. And they start doing like they soft they kind of try to move you in softly into prostitution in the name of modeling. And so they kind of get you in there knowing that you want to be loved, and they lure you into the idea that you're going to be loved through modeling, and then they start bringing you into prostitution and giving you money for this and money for that, and making justifications and little soft justifications for it. And then they start trying to get you into swinger type situations. And so pretty soon, then all of a sudden, your morality gets really broken down. It's a systematic thing that they're doing. And then, of course, they traffic you and move you into all these other rings until, your time is up. And by the time you're 40, they didn't want you anymore.
Oh my gosh, that is
And
wild.
usually by the time you're 40, they know psychologically, because this is a CIA MK Ultra program, they know psychologically you'll fragment and you'll unalive yourself, and that's it.
And how long were you with these agencies and doing swimsuit modeling for?
I was really lucky that by the time I turned 19, I got pregnant. And when my little baby came in, I was like, I don't know how to fight for me, but I'm going to fight for her. you know so I was never going to let her go through what I went through. Like, all of a sudden, this really broken person, was responsible for this perfect, beautiful little baby girl, and I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew that I wasn't going to let her get put through it. And so it gave me a lot of strength to start telling people, nope, sorry, I can't hang out with you today, I have a child. I used her as an excuse to save myself in a lot of ways. But I was also protecting her too. And so that's when I started to pull away from it. But that the psychology, wasn't all worked out within me at that point. I was still very psychologically damaged, and I was still very spiritually and emotionally damaged. And so I was pulling myself away, and I was starting to put myself in college, and trying to find my own way in the world with no support, no child support, no nothing. I was alone with this little baby. And so mostly I pulled out of that, but I was still in it without realizing that I was in it. Like, they offered me all this glamour and glory and all these things that kind of was appealing, the way my sister would come home with beautiful diamonds and men dripping on her and all these things. And so you're little and you're like, wow, everybody loves her and she's so pretty. Like, I looked up to her and I thought she was, that was what life was about. And now I'm going the other direction, and it was confusing because I didn't have anything to guide me. Like, I didn't know what I was reaching for. I just knew that I was reaching to get away from that. I wanted love though, right? And so then I ended up getting into some other situations. But for the most part, that was the end of it, other than it became more like uh bad relationships, more like using my, by then I was conditioned to dress cute and all those things. And so I was attracting wrong partners. And then I ended up in a relationship in Las Vegas with a very, very wealthy um high-rise builder who was friends with Trump, by the way. That not that that matters, because they weren't associated in this situation, but that was pretty much the end of it once I got out of that, because they were sex trafficking in that high-rise ring. They run the cops out here. Cops can't even get in there and investigate things without the owner's permission, because they basically are on their payroll. And cops can't come in there. And so they were running trafficking rings there and drug rings there. And so it's like I just couldn't get out. I'd get out of one situation, I'd get into the other, and it was still it. And then I'd get out of that and I'd get into the other, and it was still it. And I had my teacher tried to traffic. I mean, it was just endless everywhere that I turned, until I went through enlightenment. I finally broke on my knees and called for God and got touched, thank goodness. And that's what saved me. I would have probably still be in it right now if I didn't get saved. And I don't mean that in religious terms at all, at all. I mean that in a spiritual sense.
One of the other events that I was really shocked about was that you couldn't even go to school to get away from abuse, and you did have an instance, a really horrifying one with a teacher who groomed you. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, sadly, I had multiple teachers that tried to groom me in school, but I had one in particular that I think you're referencing, which is a guy named, what was his name? Garcia was his last name. He was my ninth grade teacher. I got jumped by a gang of girls because all while this was happening, I had girls that were jealous of me and they were making life hard for me too. And so I got jumped one day in this junior high. My dad moved us from one house to another house. I go to a new junior high. I got to make new friends with everybody. And this girl didn't like me, so she got the whole, so she was like one of those girls that tried to act like a tomboy, and she was the tough girl everybody was afraid of in school. So she went and told everybody that she was going to have beat me up that day. And so I just heard somebody go, Ellen, and I turn around and the whole freaking school's there. The buses are driving by and they're all empty because they want to watch her beat me up. And so she came at me and she didn't know that I had a rough childhood and I wasn't about to go down easy like that. There's one thing I'm not going to do is go down easy, So I beat her ass and then got jumped by four others and I beat their ass too, except for one gave me a little bit of a run for my money, but not too much, but enough. But still, I handled myself with all five of them. And while that was happening, the girl that started it ran in and told the principal on me. And so I got put in afternoon school for bad kids. So here's that messaging again. You're the bad one. So just like I end up in bad kid school with all the other bad kids that were broken. And there was about 14 of us. And this guy was about 500 pounds, 450-pound teacher. He was really grossly overweight. And he was a drug dealer. And he was a pervert. And he started to hire me and my friend that was also like her and I were, she had a rough child, not rough like mine, but she had a drug addict mom. And he started to prey on us and pay us to correct the kids' things, and then pay us to go to his house and do things. And then pretty soon he'd pay us to go shopping for clothes and cute little sexy short skirts, and pay us to get his co-core girlfriend clothes. And so he was grooming us, and he kept promising us cars and things like that when we turned 18, that he could be our guy. But he was trying to get an in with us there, and he got us to do cocaine and things like that. Yeah. But again, he wasn't the only one from the school system either. They were everywhere. There was my fifth grade teacher, it was my seventh grade teacher, it was my ninth grade teacher, it was the church leaders, it was people at church, it was the neighbors, it was the neighbor's uncle, it was strangers. I mean, just gonna get Utah, by the way, later I learned is again -- 1 for child molestation everywhere in the country, and it's also a base for the CIA for trauma-based victims. It's a base for them. And so, they're doing things there that they know what they're doing. These programs are designed. And they use Hollywood for it. They use the Hollywood. Hollywood has a branch called the CAA, which is a branch of the CIA, which they use social media and Hollywood movies and things like that to implant these thought forms that are demonic.
Wow, thank you for making that connection. I think a lot of people have heard of the CAA. I know I have, and it's sketchy whenever you awaken to this stuff. You sort of start questioning stuff, but you don't really know where it all connects. So thank you for making that connection. That makes a lot of sense. What
Mm.
if your ties to the CIA? How did that transpire in your life? Who was connected and how did you end up getting placed in these programs?
Well, that's a really good question. And I don't know if your audience is ready for the whole answer necessarily, but I'm going to give it anyway. Is that, well, number one, Mormons, they are the best record keepers, I think, on the planet of who's who and who came from what bloodline. And they have records of everything all the way back to King Tut and beyond. And so that can be a very good thing. It can be very good to have records like that. But those records can also be abused and misused. And if the wrong people want to get access to them, then they're going to know your bloodline. Well, bloodlines are very important if you understand anything to do with I had to be careful what I say here, because if this goes on YouTube, I don't want you to have any trouble here. But since the beginning of time, we once had 12 strands of, what we now have 2 strands of. I don't know if I'm supposed to say it or not. Okay. We once were these divine beings that had lots of strands there, and now we don't, because there was Anunnakis that came in. This is a very long story, long before the Bible. The Bible's only 6,000 years old, and we have 200,000 years or more of history that's buried, except for those of us that have soul remembrance. And so the bloodlines matter because they go into really ancient timelines of who's who on this planet and who wasn't supposed to be here that came in. And this goes back to the Garden of Eden, and it goes back to the serpent that tried to impregnate Eve, right? And so I don't know if everybody's aware or can handle the depth of that part of it, but it's very deep. Anybody that is interested should look into that part of our story in terms of the Anunnakis and the genetic mutilations that happened to humanity early on, which, by the way, Epstein was very much still actively a participant in. And that's why he wanted to impregnate lots of girls, because now we start to get into the spiritual etheric connection to why they're doing this to the souls on the earth plane. They're doing it down here to the humans because there's a big spiritual story behind it that's very important and very, very big. So that's part of why, because they know exactly who's who and who's what bloodline, and they like to scramble DNA codes. It keeps you from God. It's deep stuff. I would say that that's a small part of it. Now, my part of the CIA, I forgot that was what you first asked me. You have to keep me on track here if I get loopy. But the CIA, again, that's a main base there in Utah. And anybody who knows anything about, I've heard Kathy O'Brien, you know who she is. So I've heard her also say the same thing, that that's a big portal there for them, that they're really, really harvesting the feminine's genetics that they're doing through hybrid programs and other types of things that are really, really bad. I hope if this isn't supposed to be on YouTube, you can cut it out. But there are programs that are happening underground. Now we're going into the underground tunnels and the networks there, and the programs that they have under there that most humans would pee themselves if they really understood were true. And they are true. And so it gets worse, because then you get into the SRA and you get into the actual ritual abuse, where underground they're taking our ovums. I have memories of being taken there. I have memories of having my ovums taken also from some of the LDS beings that were doing that. And I have memories of them also doing MK Ultra programs on me underground, where they were manipulating my mind, and they were, I mean, that's where you start to get into the torture stuff and to the real bad stuff that happens underground, like real bad. And it's worse than most people understand. And I'm not a doom and gloomer. I work for God, and I know that love wins, but I'm also a truth teller. That's God. You have to be in truth to be in alignment. And so you can't just hide from it, because it's hard to look at. It's not getting us anywhere. We already played that game for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and the only thing it did was keep feeding the beast.
Did most of your abuse occur in Utah and especially in Park City, or were you taken to different parts of the country and or world?
I would say that most of it happened there, but some of it was outside of the cities. I was taken a couple times out of country, but most of it was there. Most of it was underground, or a lot of it was underground too. Some of it was on surface every day people just smile and nod and be a good girl, and don't you dare have anger, and don't you dare have all those other emotions that are natural that you should have. You just smile at us and do what we tell you. And by the way, you're a woman and we're smarter than you. So you don't get to tell us what we tell you. This is the whole patriarchal stuff in that church too that gets people so out of alignment, because they don't think that women can have intuitive knowingness when women are portals to God. That's we transport souls back and forth. Like, what do you mean I don't get my intuition and you get to be the priesthood because you're a man? No, that's wrong. And that's the culture also. So it stifles your capacity to intuitively know when something's wrong or right. And then when you say something to them, then they make up these stories and they give you justifications, and you got to go to the church leader and get his permission first in order for you to know your own God self and for you to know God yourself. It's a very distorted situation. So there's that all going on in the background. And then again, you got the gangs that are running out there. So you got all these networks. You got the gangs, you got the modeling scene, you got the religious scenes, you got the governmental organizations that are all running these programs from them, as long as probably 25 other groups of organizations there that we could name. And they're all in some ways connected. They're like fingers of the same beast.
And I think that's a big reason why society has such a hard time grasping it. Because let's just say they come across a video, it's really hard to compress all this into the video types
Yeah.
we watch these days, the little like 60-second clips. So people try to, and it comes out in a way that can sound really sensationalized and unbelievable to the person listening to that little clip. Like
Yeah.
you really do have to listen to a testimony like this and have it be explained how these industries operate separately and how they target children and families, and then how they're all also interwoven in so many ways with every other industry, and how they're actually all working together uh,
Yeah.
in cooperation. And where us on the outside, we see everything so separate. We see the government as very separate from our schools, even though we know that they're not, that they're run by it. But since the government's not, we don't see politicians in the schools, so it becomes separated. Same thing with businesses, same thing with the church. But it really does all the, a lot of people that are exposed as abusers were politicians or church leaders or Freemasons or more than one of those. They were leaders in their community.
They're
And
all, a lot of them are handlers, but I do want to say that at the same time, so you've got all these organizations, and those organizations originally were once good organizations. It's good to have government, it's good to have churches, it's good to have whatever else we have there, but they have a shadow group of beings that operate within those systems that do the shadowy things and suck everything underground. So they take all of our tax dollars. You ever do those documentaries where you listen to those journalists that found millions and millions of dollars from every organization missing, and it just disappears every year? It goes underground to fund the underground shadow government organizations, the Getty, issues and things like that. And there's been victims that have come out that were in a Hugh Hefner's property that had gotten taken underground, where they have tunnels to connect each other. That's where they're connecting, is underground, where all that stuff is happening, which I told you they have in Utah also. So that's what they're doing. And that's why it's so hard for people. Well, I work at the government and I'm not bad. I've never seen anybody bad in here doing it. Well, they're not telling you. You're not part of the club. This is a club. You got to put cloaks on. You got to go do rituals. You have to go through a lot of initiation processes in dark initiations in order to even be told what they're doing behind the scenes. You have to get put through a rigorous process to be even part of their dark club. And so they know who they are, and they operate on the outskirts like everybody else, pretending that they're all part of this little happy-go-lucky land. And they're really actually doing occult rituals, and they're taking all of your funds and your people and your children underground, and they're doing darker things down there with your money. You paid for it. You paid for it.
that's a really good way to put it. It's like the shadow hides underneath the light. There's a lot of good people in all of these organizations and institutions,
Yes.
and the few
And they
people.
have no idea that this is going on in their own organizations.
Right. Yes. And so neither does anybody else. Like even whenever you go to the bank, like we know banking is nefarious at its core, that, it's an evil entity, and the people that, are at the very top of it don't have our
Mhm.
best interests in mind. But a lot of times you go to the bank and your bank teller's like super friendly, and you might talk to them, and have a good
Yeah.
experience. You're not thinking
Yeah.
like, oh, this is evil what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like a lot of these things are meant for good, and they might be doing some good, but there are those infiltrators that they hide behind the light, and so people don't see the shadow. All that they see is the public persona of it.
Right. And I am a shadow healer, so I'm all about exposing the shadow, because if you don't, it will never heal. And I mean that for all of us. We will never heal as a species if we don't face these really dark things that have to be faced, because we've done this for thousands and thousands of years. And the only thing that happened is that grew and grew and grew and grew, and child molestation has become so big and so hideous now that it's almost unmanageable. I mean, 800,000 children a year just in the United States a year? That's almost 1 million children a year that go missing just in the United States. And nobody talks about it on the news. Well, why? Well, because who owns the news? And who owns the banks? And who's running the governments? Well, we all know that they're all on the Epstein list. I mean, most of them. They can't tell you who's on the Epstein list. It's them.
Right. Exactly.
Like,
That's true.
and I am telling you from personal experience, it's them. It's some of the high end attorneys and judges and politicians and Hollywood elitists. I hate that word because they are not elite. There's nobody better than you. You, me, everybody is all equal. There's no such thing as an elitist. They're disgusting liars. What they are is really the cockroach of the humanity, you know.
Exactly.
But
Parasite
that's
class.
they are the parasite class. And so that's the problem. And now they're writing the laws to protect themselves. And now they're very much in full force trying to write laws that give them justifications to do all these dark things to little kids. You watch. That's what they're putting on the books. Watch. They're tired of hiding in the shadows too. They want to come out in the open and do what they're doing.
Right. And they want our
It
public
took a lot of
support.
work for them to steal all your money so that they could take over all the systems, so that they could, now they're just going to come out and do it, and you're going to deal with it. That's what they want.
And some people are even going to sympathize with it, which is horrible. They
They're already doing that,
like,
aren't they?
yeah,
Mhm.
trying to make people
They're
feel
already
bad,
doing it.
pedophiles, and it's wild what's going on in the world right now. It's such a crazy psychological operation, but you're absolutely right.
Mhm.
That's the end goal. Like they don't want to hide. They want it to be normalized in society, so
Yeah.
everybody's consenting and even participating in it with them. It's disgusting.
And it's an absolute, obviously it's Luciferian and Antichrist, but it's an absolute attack really on the essence of God, because who's closest to God but little children, you know?
Exactly.
And so it's a whole spiritual war too, absolutely. But how they got away with it for so long is to stay hidden in the shadows and to use all these systems to make you think that you couldn't talk about the fact that you got molested and it was that guy over there. If you can't come out and tell your people that you got molested and it was that person over there, and know that is going to get resolved the way it should, we don't have a society. We have hell. That's what we have. And we get to create heaven or hell because we're creator beings. So you want to create hell or heaven? Well, we're already in a hell state here. And the only way to change it now is to stop doing hellish things. Stop supporting demons. It's
Exactly.
heavy. It's heavy conversation. It's hard to face this stuff, isn't it? You got to look at it. And
It
it's
is.
hard to look at.
And they've made us so dependent on it. I hear about these parents who like are trying to do good for their kids by not, what's the word I can say since we're going to be on YouTube, not like giving them, medicine as soon as
Mm-hmm,
they
mm-hmm,
are born,
mm-hmm,
and, not associating with big pharma as much, and
mm-hmm,
kids can't go to public school, or they can't
mm-hmm,
enter the school system if they don't go through those protocols. They get alienated from social events, and even
mm-hmm,
parents who, disagree with it. And so it's
mm-hmm.
really hard, on people not only just looking at this and recognizing it, but then saying, do you have the courage to step away from it and the control that you've allowed them to have over you? Are you willing to cut that tie, and protect your kids over the convenience of, if you don't want them to go to school for, or if, I should say, if you don't want to
Yeah.
medicate them, are you willing to do that at the expense of maybe having to homeschool? And that can be really hard for people, especially because they keep inflating prices of everything. They're making it harder and harder to be independent or to have, one parent at home. there's so many ways that they pressure people, even people who are awake to this, to like just
Yeah.
keep clinging onto this system.
Yeah, even with these social media platforms, we're not even free to talk about it. It's still very, we have a lot of work as a species to do, which is fine, because at least we're in the age of light now where people are seeing the truth. And you are doing a great job of helping that. But you know that this is what it takes, is to get out there and at least keep putting those seeds of consciousness out there. We have made epic growth as a species in the last 15 years in terms of where humanity was 15 years ago. Having this conversation alone would have been a lot harder for them to receive than it is today, because there's been so many wonderful souls and light workers and warriors and anons and whatever that you want to call them, that are out there fighting for truth, that it's like it's kind of a common discussion now. Thank heavens. That was the first hardest part. The next hardest part is collapsing that shadow aspect of everything that they're doing. And they've stolen all of our money too, and they're you know, taking over our cities and our lands, and fires are happening that shouldn't be happening, and people are losing their lands that they shouldn't be losing. It's all thievery, it's theft, it's criminal. And it is absolutely happening intentionally. And so, you know, now we have to figure out how to get those resources back to the people. The land and the seeds is the first step, because when you have land, you can build your own house with your own hands. Our ancestors did it. We don't need your $1 million houses that you stole from us from the housing crashes that you caused for us, so you could steal billions of you know, bailout money to give to your banker buddies, when it should have gone to those people in the first place, because it was their money. So, you know, we have to figure out how to get that back in our hands now if we're going to have any kind of a future. But again, money we don't even need. We need the land, and we need the seeds, and we need each other. And we do need each other, because without that, we're, you know, it's that's how they've kept us so disempowered for so long. And that's why even with my family, I don't hate them. I love all of them. I know why they did what they did. I'm not angry with any of them. I probably wouldn't really put myself around my sister, because she's just not healed enough. She's not a safe person, literally, you know, she's very, very sick. But I love all of them, and I don't have anger. I don't excuse bad behavior, but you know, I give it to the divine. It's not mine to resolve. It's somebody higher than me. It's something higher than me that resolves that in the universal flow of life. But I'm all about helping people heal that want to heal, and I'm all about telling the truth so that we as a people can end these karmic cycles, because the child abuse and the sexual abuse of children, if you understand, going all the way back to the DNA and your 12 strands that you once used to have, it has to heal from generations of sexual abuse of children. It has to do with that. And that is your soul. If you don't get that back, you don't have your whole soul back. You got to work at it.
And so let's go back to that moment where you broke the karmic cycle and the generational cycle. I feel like that happened automatically when you had your daughter. Not that your spirit wasn't already fighting it. It seems like you were fighting this your whole life. You never fully gave into it. There was always parts of you that knew that all of this was wrong, and it was never something that that you let become you. But having your child seems like that was a moment where you said something greater than you came into your life, that you might not have acted the way that you did if it was just you, but now that you had this being to care for, all that you wanted to do was protect it and not have it perpetuate the abuse that you did. So let's talk about your journey, sort of awakening to what happened to you. When did you start to get the memories? When did you start to put these pieces together? And how did having a child impact maybe the trajectory of your life and where you may have gone?
Well, I always say that her and my nephew, who I raised, were my little angels, because they saved me through it in certain ways. But definitely my daughter, because she didn't have anybody else, it was just me. I had a duty to her, and that started to put me on the path of breaking the generational curses. But I wasn't consciously aware of what was happening. I put myself in therapy as a 14-year-old. I literally asked to go to therapy at 14 years old, and I went every week for 15 years. I studied psychology inside out and backwards on my own self because I wanted to heal, because I didn't understand what was happening to me. So I put myself through therapy. I went every single week. And so I was already on a track of doing that, but I was still smoking cigarettes, and I was still dating the wrong people, and I was still being trafficked, and I was still a single parent that was trying to figure out how to survive in this world. And I hadn't yet pieced together how the networks were working. I was thinking they were all these horrible random events, and I must just be a magnet for bad stuff, right? I didn't understand that it was a network. And that those networks then connect with other networks. And once you're in that trap, it's like a spider web, it's a spider web. And so MK Ultra, spider and fly, and but I still didn't become conscious, at least in terms of like really. I think I was just naturally working at it all along. I didn't understand yet, but I became very conscious, fully activated. All my DNA came online in my 30s. And that's when my daughter was about 16 or 15 when that happened. And my whole world changed after that. I stopped smoking after 30 years of smoking. I stopped dating toxic people, and I met my divine counterpart, my twin flame. First, I met him in heaven, and then I met him on earth. And I went through all kinds of transformation, metamorphosis, to correct all the neural pathways in my mind. I was shown how I was fragmented. I started to pull all that back together, because I was like starting to get multiple personalities because I was so broken. And but I healed all of this naturally by myself, with God and with my twin flame. But it took a lot of work. It didn't happen easily. And then of course I was very aware of how screwy my family lineage, where the problems were in the DNA lineage there. And I began to do so much healing on an etheric level through the spirit world and stuff, that I began to even have family members come to me for healing. After years of ascension, some of them have come to me for healing. And some of them are asking me questions, my dad's 80 years old. He's asking me about twin flames. He's been divorced 6 times. He's asking me about twin flames.
Gosh.
But it's just I started to heal the lineage, and I've even had family members come to me that were in the polygamy and had a lot of wounding from that, men that were wounded from the polygamy, that came to me for spiritual healing sense. So I think that I was already doing it unconsciously. I was working for my spirit. And then in my 30s, I really became aware of the whole thing. I saw everything from the heavenly realms. I got to see things from the eye of Ra. And when I did, I even got given a choice to come back to Earth again, because I went through another death experience there, came out of my body, went home to heavens. You can watch some videos about that on my YouTube channel. But I got literally up in front of a council of source and other beings, angelic beings, and I got shown the whole story of humanity. And I was done with it, because that was the last time my heart broke. Tore right open, and I said, that's it, I'm going home. And I left my body. And then I was shown things that I didn't know before about humanity, and I was shown everything going on in the astral realms with all these other things that nobody knows about. And I thought, oh, that's no wonder humanity's so messed up. They don't know that there's other stuff. You think the underground networks are bad? Wait till you see how gangster stuff is in the 4D. It's pretty gangster there. And so when I saw that, I was given the choice to come back and help humanity. And I came back, and whoop, back in my body you are. Only took a second.
When did you learn about the terms satanic ritual abuse, MK Ultra, dissociative identity disorder? How did you end up discovering that? Because that can be really difficult to sort of find the terminology for what happened to you.
Well, in my city and where I was raised, I actually knew a lot about Satanism and satanic rituals, because they were common out there, and a lot of kids were doing them thinking that it was just a fun game to play. And a lot of people were doing them thinking that it was no big deal, you know. So that it was actually kind of a little groups out there that are into that all over the place. You'd be amazed at how many people actually choose to do satanic rituals. um I didn't think much. Again, I thought it was kind of a separate issue. I didn't think much about it. So I didn't think that what I was going through was satanic ritual abuse. And also, like I said, a lot of the stuff underground, when they took me underground and got my ovum and stuff, they use technologies to wipe your memories. So I didn't have a lot of memory on that. For a long time, I didn't have memories about that until I went through enlightenment. But that's also satanic ritual abuse too, in certain ways, because some of what they're doing down there is that. But I didn't piece everything together or think that it was a satanic thing. I just thought it was all these random perverts. That's all. I was just like everybody else. I just thought, oh man, there's a lot of perverts out there, you know. I was just from that perspective. But later, I just became aware of it, I think, once I had my enlightenment, and then I connected with others that had been through the MK Ultra, and slowly the pieces of my consciousness came together, and I became so fully aware of the fact that that's what they're doing. And I hope that answered your question.
You did. And so you mentioned you healed on your own and with your twin flame, with your partner. What were some of the things that worked for you, and then what were some of the things that didn't work while you were trying to heal from all of this?
Well, that's a long answer. That's like a college course, honestly. Because I was already spending decades in therapy, that all of that added and contributed to my healing journey. Um, you know, I think that the twin flame story itself again goes back to why they're doing this ritual abuse on people, because they're trying to keep the twin flames apart from each other. That's really the truth. That's the ultimate truth. That is the ultimate of what they're doing. But just coming together with him alone will heal. You know, when you find that other part of you that's your soul, you heal. But we've had to go through many things, and I think for every individual soul it will be slightly different, because everybody has different stories and different experiences that they've had that they have to work through in their soul. So I wish that there was an easy answer for that, but there's not.
That's okay. It's amazing just to hear, that you were able to find love, that you were able to have this healthy love in your life, and you started business ventures, which we'll talk about soon. But just seeing, where you came from and how you took charge, took your power back, and life started blossoming for you and giving you the things that you never had as a child, and really helped you become the person that you always needed, so that way you could be the mother that your daughter needed, the partner that your partner needed, and vice versa, and being able to sort of attract all that to you through the work that you were doing. It's really, really inspirational and cool just to see that point in your life where you just went through all this horror, and then things just slowly started to turn themselves around for you.
Yeah, I think my poor little daughter, she got exposed to some of the trauma before I was healed. So, but I was shown spiritually that she and I chose to come in to end the cycles together. So she chose too to have some of that to work through so that we could together end things. But yeah, it was a lot to take the power back for anybody that's watching. It definitely, I would say that if you're going through something like that, the first step is to absolutely love your own little child soul. That little girl that I was as a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old, I had to decide that I was going to fight for her if nobody else did. I was going to fight for her to the end of time against everybody in the world if I had to, if nobody else was going to. And that changed everything, because now it was all about saving Ellen. And my whole world turned around. I don't care what my dad thinks anymore. I don't need his permission to have my own mind and my own knowingness about what I know about my soul, or anything else for that matter. I love him, but I don't need his permission to think what I think and know what I know. I don't need a teacher to tell me. what I know, I'm smarter than most of them. I have way more intuitive knowing, and I don't operate out of ego anymore. So I don't get lured into the traps that they're in. They're in traps that make them feel powerful in a pitiful way on earth, and they're powerless as spirits. So that changed my world. But I think anybody else that's been through it, that's really what it's going to take, is that you have to become the hero for your own inner being. You have to become the hero that nobody else could be for you, just like you put it.
When you started going on this journey and you have your daughter and your priorities are starting to change as far as what you really care about and sort of the trajectory that your life is going versus where you want it to go and starting to steer it that way, what started happening with the people around you? Did you have support as you were sort of awakening to all of this, putting these pieces together? Did you have abandonment? How were you met by the people in your life on this journey?
Well, that's a good question. The moment that I awakened, I was in my 30s. And back then, that was in 2000. Well, first I had one awakening in 2008 and another one in 2011. And I really saw a lot of stuff from other worlds that most people don't, they get freaked out if you talk about. And even with the twin flames story, I was having a telepathic relationship with a stranger, a ghost, basically. And so that's how I met him. It was a telepathic, it was an absolute psychic connection. And when I was telling people about it, they all thought I was a loony bird. Everybody thought I was a Looney Tune. And I was talking about, astral beings and entities and Illuminatis and all. Oh, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that word either, but I was talking about all the underworld things that are going on. And they all thought that I was crazy, but I was already so independent in my own life. Like I lived in a different city than my whole family, and my daughter was kind of moving out at the time that I was going through enlightenment, that nobody was around to care much. It was like I was going through a rite of passage there to really step out of that old world that I once lived in. And even then I was awakened. I came in as an indigo soul. I was a very awakened soul from the very beginning, which is another reason why they targeted me. And I'm talking CIA there, and other beings, key men, other realms. But they knew who I was as a soul because they've done this with me in many other lifetimes. They knew exactly who I was. So that's I don't know. I guess that answers your question, maybe.
Absolutely. And so then where on this journey did you start to decide to be a spiritual healer, and how did that journey start to transpire in your life?
Well, I think the difference between people like me who truly went through enlightenment versus some of them that are going and getting Reiki healing certificates and stuff, the difference is I never wanted to be one. I never thought about it. I didn't like being psychic. I hid that I was psychic for most of my life. I hated telling people because I thought they would think I was crazy, like my mom. And I always was gifted, and I always knew that. I was very guided by spirit beings from the time that I was a 2-year old. I remember 2 years old, 4 years, they were always guiding me, always. But I tried to turn some of it off in my 20s, because I never wanted to be a healer. I didn't think about it. I was just trying to survive. I was just trying to take care of my baby, and I was trying to make a living, and I was trying to find love. And so I never wanted to be. And then when I went through my enlightenment, well, that was given to me by source. But I didn't start to heal even at that. Well, I did just, casually start trying to heal people every time I would run across somebody. It was just kind of like a natural. I knew how to heal them. I knew exactly, I could see inside your soul, and I could see where all your wounds are. I see where your mom was mean to you, and I see all these things. And so, I just started to naturally, but I took on the title and put together a website and things like that, probably maybe about 10 years ago or 15 years ago, something like that.
And so talk about what you decided to do on your journey and the work that you do now with one-on-one, publicly, and obviously online. You have so much content and so many services that you offer. I'd love for you to talk about kind of how you decided to get into all of that, and a little bit about what you do because it's really fascinating.
Ah, thank you. Well, like I said, I developed a lot of understanding of psychology in the mental field in my earlier years when I was going through my own healing process. And then after I went through enlightenment and I went through another 15 years of ascension, I went through all the spiritual healing of soul retrieval and etheric healing and DNA healing and all those things. And I had my own DNA activated, and I began to connect with angelic beings quite regularly. They work with me a lot of times when I'm in sessions. They come in and they assist with healings where we do astral healing on people. We do cognitive process, like therapies and walking people through those stages. But I do all kinds of things, everything from basically I do medical mediumship. I can take a look at somebody's I can just look at their light body and scan it, and I can see where they have spiritual infections that are creating physical harm in their life. It can even manifest as illness later. I began again to connect with angelic beings. So I am guided oftentimes by them how to basically, I know if you're looking at the website here and you see the Seraphim blueprint, this is your original divine blueprint from source that we come into this physical plane and we fall out of alignment with our true divinity because we've been taught so many things that are untrue and not in alignment with the soul. I connect to galactic beings. I have telepathy with all kinds of galactic beings that help also with quantum healing and light code activation. This helps to activate all that DNA that's dormant in your bodies. If you're not activating this DNA in your bodies, you're not truly ascending. A lot of religions have taught people that you can just croak and go to heaven. And it's not necessarily true. You really have to do soul retrieval and pull back all these aspects of yourself, including your DNA, in order to fully heal and fully ascend. So I do a lot of that. I do a lot of trauma therapy, obviously, because I like to call myself a trauma queen. I'm the queen of trauma. You can't outdo me on that, no matter how hard you try. I'm not having a competition, but I like to call myself a trauma queen. I know how to heal trauma and MK Ultra programming in people, because I've gone through it and I know how it works. And again, the twin flame stuff is also, it's all connected, okay? The star seeds, it's all connected because it's part of your multidimensional self. The twin flame is part of your multidimensional soul self. And so I do all these different modalities because they're all connected to the whole you, the whole 12-strand DNA being that you are.
Wow. And so on the website, for people who might be on, say, Spotify or iTunes, you can actually book sessions with her right on the website, and I'll have that in the show notes. But if you guys go under services on the menu, it'll bring them all up. And there's a little button that you can see if you're looking at the screen. It says book a session, more information. And she has a lot of different services that she offers. And you also do, so people can also hire you to do public speaking. Can you talk a little bit about working with others or even podcasters, if there's people listening, sort of how they can get in touch with you and book you for events and podcasts?
Yeah, absolutely. You could just go to ellenredd.com, ELLENREDD.com. Never ever order a session with me if it's not through that website, because there's a lot of imposters that steal my name and they copy my accounts all over on every platform. So make sure that you go straight to the website. The website's also going to be a new one soon. So what you see today is probably going to be different in the next month. We're building out a whole bunch of more services and things for you guys. Just take some time to do. But for now, you can go there. If you are interested in an interview, I'm happy to do that. I like to see your content first and make sure we're a good energy match. But I'm happy to have that discussion with you. I do public speaking. I've been to events, where I get brought in as a teacher, and I teach on alchemy. I teach on multidimensionality. I teach on basically anything spiritual. Um, What else? Mediumship. Obviously, I do channel past over loved ones. I do connect them. And there's a lot of healing, you guys, that happens from that, because a lot of the wounds that people carry in them is from their loved ones that didn't love them the right way. And they don't know how to tell you from their soul how they really felt about you, even though they did these horrible things to you. My dad will never in his physical self be able to tell me how rotten he feels inside for it, but I already know because I can see that spiritually. So sometimes they come in when they've passed over and they correct that, and it helps to heal you. So I do some of that work also. But you're welcome to just message me if you want to have any discussion. I'm open to anything that you'd like to propose if it's reasonable.
And I'm going to have you go through some of your other social media sites. We just talked about your professional career, which is amazing. And one of the things that I think is just as amazing is you've not only helped so many people, but you're also now starting to share about your testimony, such as on this podcast. And you made an incredible testimony episode on your own YouTube channel. Can you talk about your journey to deciding to speak publicly and talk a little bit about some of the platforms that you're doing that on now?
You know something? Thank you, because I think that was the hardest part, was deciding to come out and talk about it. It was one thing to be able to get the voice to tell certain people that were close to me, and it was another thing to be able to even just write a little about it on X or on my smaller Facebook page. It's a whole nother thing to grab it by the horns as a spiritual healer and say, hey, guess what? Let me tell you something. Don't come to me thinking that I don't know what you're going through, because I know. I've been there. I could never be a healer, a true healer, had I not. Never. There's no way. My soul had to put me through these things in order to know how to help you get through it. And that's the thing. So I don't know. I guess I hope that answered your question. I can't remember what you asked me exactly.
Yeah, what inspired you to come forth and share about your story and kind of your journey,
Um,
sharing about your life, because you've spent so much time helping others overcome obstacles in their lives and
yeah.
the courageous decision of putting your story out there, which is incredible.
I see. I got you. Okay. Yeah, it's a hard thing to do, because people's perceptions of you when you get hurt sometimes are that there's something wrong with you, because they've been programmed by the machine to think that way about you. And just like you said in the beginning of our session, it wasn't my sin to bear. I don't have to be ashamed of it. I didn't, I was innocent there. And I'm not ashamed about a single thing about my story. But I think that for me, part of why I wanted to, as a spiritual healer, expose this part of myself, because I know a lot of them don't, or a lot of them don't have these experiences either. But it's too important in this timeline in humanity for us to continue pretending that it's not happening. And I just have that fire in my heart where I came in to help correct this timeline, and I came in to put the planet back on its axis to end these cycles, and I'm going to do it with everything I got. So if I got to tell you the things that I went through so that you understand that I know what I'm talking about, then that's what I'm going to do. And so I just decided to do it. And I've had actually people mock me for it later. They use it to try to hurt you. I've had even some old clients that have come and tried to use it against me to hurt me. But I don't get hurt by that. I know what it is, and I'm not bothered by what they want to do to cast stones at me. I'm titanium now. Don't get to hurt me anymore. It's just, there's nothing you can do. So I'm just at peace with my story.
Well, the truth sets us free, and so it's not only healing to share, but it's also healing for those who listen. We all heal by sharing, putting our stuff out on the table, letting other people see us and be visible, and then also taking the time to sit with other people as they present themselves and put all their stuff on the table, and say, "This is who I am."
Well,
Uh,
that's just it. I'm not doing this for those people that want to cast stones. I'm doing it for the people that don't know how to find their way out of it, because they're the ones that need the help, and they're the ones that I'm working for.
100%, yes. And what other social media sites are you on? Because I have your YouTube channel up. If you want to talk about that a little bit, especially for people who might be listening and not watching, to talk about what your YouTube channel is about, what types of videos you post, and then you can go through some of your other social media sites as well and share with how people can maybe donate to you if they want also.
Okay. There's a on my website, ellenred.com, there is the YouTube channel, Ellen Red, and then I think it goes by Crystal's Palladian Priestess. But if you just type in Ellen Red, I do have two YouTube channels, but the main one's on the website. You know how it is with all the censorship, we have to have 2 or 3 of everything because they're always taking us down. So I have 3 different accounts on TikTok. But if you go to my website, all the links are there. And I'm all the links to X, Facebook. I have dozens of Facebook pages and groups. You just go to this Psychic Ellen Red on Facebook, or go to the website, and all the links of the main pages are there. And if you really, really follow me for a while, you'll find all the other backup ones just to make sure that we're in touch. I got a Telegram channel, I got groups, I got whatever, but the website's the best way. And just to keep it clean and simple for you. And because of censorship, I haven't posted a lot on YouTube. I usually put maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 videos a month. But I put everything up there around healing, spiritual healing, ascension teachings, twin flame teachings. I go into a lot of galactic stuff because, again, that's another layer of your multidimensional self. So when you understand that you are existing in multiple timelines and multiple dimensions at once, then you can start to pull back all of your DNA and you can start to heal your spirit body. And so when I talk about these things, I'm not being Looney Tune. I'm literally teaching you about your whole self, your whole soul self. And those are some of the things that I share there. I will hopefully get better at doing videos now that I have a backup channel, because I can test them on the backup channel. And if they get bumped, I can put them over. If they don't get bumped, I can put them on the main one. So I'm going to start putting more out for you guys. But there's enough there, plenty to go through. And if you guys want more videos, you can let me know what you're looking to hear about. I do teach private workshops, and I'm getting really focused on doing more private work because of all the censorship and all the challenges I've had keeping channels and stuff up. So, I'm having some private workshops. I'm working on books, and I'm getting ready to start a little property where people can come and visit. But that's going to take a good year or 2 to get all built out. So anyway, go to the website.
And she has a Patreon also you guys can find on the website. I'll have her PayPal link. I love if you guys have $5 extra, $10 extra more. It's a lot of people always say, well, what can I do? Like, who do I donate to? And I always say, go right to survivors, buy a service from them, support their work, buy their book. Follow them on YouTube. If you don't have money to give, just go support and give them followers. Let the enemy know that we have eyes on these brave souls coming forward. That's a huge way that we can support, is just by sharing their content that they're putting out for free, watching it, learning from it, sharing it with others, and subscribing, commenting, letting people know that, hey, like, you mess with this girl, like, you're messing with us, like, we need to be the armies that stand behind survivors and be their protection, because they don't get whistleblower protection for coming forth and sharing this. Like, we have to do it for them. We have to be that protection that society from the authority level doesn't give them. And that's a really easy, free way to support survivors. And then if you do want to give, skip the nonprofits, you guys, unless it's owned or endorsed by a survivor, and go actually support them, support their services, support their donation links, give to their projects, buy their books. It's an awesome way that you can feel good about knowing where your money goes, knowing that you're giving directly to somebody who is creating for us, and you're not feeding some selfish CEO's pockets. You know exactly where your money's going. So I'm going to have all of Ellen's links below. If you guys want to connect with her, she's very active on Twitter. You guys can friend her and message her there too. You guys can connect with her on her website, and just from a couple clicks, you guys can book sessions with her and get in contact with her. I'll have her Telegram channel, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of her sites I'll have in the show notes. You guys can just go down and click. And Ellen, is there anything else that we didn't talk about today that you wanted to share or talk about?
I got to tell you that you are the first person that's ever said something like that about helping me. I've never had anybody other than my therapist really actually offer to do help. And I don't think that people realize that MK Ultra victims spend their entire lives doing the healing work, which they don't have time to function. You can't really sometimes make money because you can't keep jobs because you're so fragmented. You're so damaged that it's hard to make appointments. It's hard to get anywhere. You don't know why. You don't understand why you're so screwy, why you can't just be a normal citizen, because the damage is so bad that MK Ultra victims tend to be impoverished. And oftentimes, and this is part of their design too, that oftentimes they've been designed to off themselves by the time they're 40 because of these types of traumas. And I've never had anybody offer that. I am amazed.
That
I
was
don't, I mean, I'm just telling you, I'm not going to cry again because I can't, but I mean, that was a beautiful thing to offer to everyone that's a victim, because they are truly the ones who have almost in certain ways carried a lot of burdens for humanity in a way,
and we
and the
just want
healing
to
work.
learn from you. Like it would be my dream if this is what you did and this was your career, was to educate people on what you went through, how to overcome it, that you could work with people. Like, and for every survivor, like it is really sad that, the government's never going to give us a job that promotes
Mhm.
talking about satanic ritual abuse and educating people on MK Ultra. Like they're against that. They're never going to give us a job. But if we can come together as a society and say, all right, how can I resource these brave souls coming forward? I want them to do that full time. The world needs to hear their voice. If a ton of people gave $1 out of their pocket or
Mhm.
$5, we could
It
easily
would support us so that we could keep getting out there. Because for me, I can just tell you in my experience, I've lost other accounts on YouTube and TikTok. I've lost my LinkedIn permanently trying to tell the truth. I've been banned a lot of times on Facebook trying to, and I'm self-employed, so it makes it very difficult. And I appreciate you putting that out there, because I don't think people realize the risks that we're taking to try to heal this world. And we do need each other, and we do need the support. And I appreciate that very much.
Well, I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I know it does, and is going to help so many people. So I'm more than happy always to help promote the work that you guys do. It amazes me. There's so many people that have never had major obstacles in their life. They have every opportunity to write a book or start a business, and they never do what you guys do. You guys are out here, you have businesses and books and podcasts and a multitude of other things, and I think it's so badass. Like I want people to support that. Like that's and to be inspired to maybe do that themselves if they have a dream that they haven't pursued. It's really inspiring seeing what you're doing and everything that you've overcome. And now, like I said, you get to take the torch that was given to you on your healing journey and you're lighting other people's flames. And it's beautiful, Ellen. We need you
Yeah.
doing this.
That lady's name is Joyce, and she lit my flame at 15, and I've never she just put light back in my heart, and I've never let it die since. And it's her light being paid forward. And yeah, I hope that if I even touch one person like she did, it would make the world a better place. But I hope to do more too.
You do and you have. And there's going to be people that say, Ellen gave me my light and now I'm going to go pass it on. So you get to now give that gift to other people and you're doing it. Thank you for giving it to me and the
Amazing.
audience today. It's an honor to have you on.
Well, thank you so much, sweetie. You touched my heart today. Thank you.
You are absolutely welcome. And for everybody listening, again, I'll have all Ellen's information in the show notes. Whatever platform you're on, just go down. It's just an easy click. It lights up as a hyperlink. So click, take you to her website or her social media. Go follow, support, purchase, whatever you guys can do. Go support this brave warrior coming forward and sharing with us in any way that you guys can. Share this interview, share her content on her YouTube channel. Tons of free content on there, you guys. Go check it out. I'll have all my links also in the show notes. Would love your guys' support wherever you guys are able to also. I'm so honored that you guys stick around and support and go so hard for all these amazing brave souls coming forward. We really couldn't do this without you guys. This is, it's a team effort. I always say it takes a village to raise a child, and it's going to take the whole world to save a child. So all of us coming together is so powerful. I'm so excited to see, Ellen, what you do, in the future. Would love to have you back. I know everybody else would too. And I really, like I said, we appreciate you guys. Without you guys, we'd be speaking into, a black abyss. But because we have you guys supporting us and helping share this information slowly is reaching more people, and we couldn't do it without you. So you
That's
guys, Thank you so much for listening. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.